Hey guys, welcome into the Pucker Reborn channel. Today we're doing something a little bit different. It's going to be called a Battle Brothers podcast. And essentially we just got guys coming together and we're just going to be talking about the game. And in particular today we're going to be going over a lot of the polls that I had put up over the last few months. And also going to read some of the comments, guys. So if you are a part of the channel or you're not, you can use this as a tool to learn more as well as just listen in the background while you're playing the game. So today we're going to be featuring three other guys here besides myself. Of course, you all know Carvajal, and we have Gordon Comstock, and finally, as everybody knows, Shinobi. So with these guys here, let's dive right on in to the first poll. So the first poll, guys, when I had set this up, it was 2 months ago, was favorite range weapon. We have ourselves the bow, the crossbows, the handguns, and the throwing weapons. As you guys can see on the screen, throwing weapons ended up winning with 34%. Crossbows came in at 29%, bows came in at 22%, and finally, handguns came in at 16%. So, the question is, what are your guys' personal favorite range weapon? Any of you can, if any of you want to jump in.
Throwing all the way. The most bang for your buck for damage, you know, the versatility that it gives you in the early game to have that little bit of edge on a couple of your guys when the enemy's advancing is huge. I just love them so much more than crossbows, which would be my second choice, because killing frenzied crossbow, that armor pen, it just works out so nicely.
Right on. Carv, how do you feel about it?
I think Shinobi's right that throwing weapons are probably the best ranged, like pure ranged weapon, but I don't like pure ranged. I think a lot of fights need melee attack, and just at least the way I play, a lot of the positioning requires melee, or at least there's like a space between, so you really need bullseye, but you're just gonna hit your own brothers. So I went with crossbows because they make the best hybrids. I think there's an argument for handguns. If you like handgun overwhelm fearsome spam, that's probably broken and will win everything, but that sounds kind of boring. So I don't like bows. I think bows are just, I've done a whole thing on them. They promote kind of like static gameplay, and then you just shoot straight and then hope that you land 30s or 40%ers. And that's not really a lucky way. You're really just relying on RNG at that point. I think crossbows are just better for the armor pen. They can one-shot goblins. They do more damage, and they're better for hybrids.
Right on. Gordon, how do you feel about it?
Well, a few disagreements. I don't agree that crossbows have put out more damage than bows. Properly spec'd bowman is going to do more damage than your crossbowman. 100%. He's going to put out 3. And if you're going to go pure range, that's where I'd be. Certainly not with the crossbow. But I agree with Carv that sort of pure ranged doesn't have much utility for me in my companies. However, if I'm going hybrid with throwing weapons. The DPS is unmatched almost across the game. You've got to do some really interesting stuff in order to out DPS a properly built throwing brother. So they would win out for me. Second for me, definitely handguns. Not just because of the debuff they can offer, but because you can do it with average brothers. You don't need high-spec'd range attack in order to be effective with handguns, which means you can use them early. And I, unlike Shinobi, don't like using throwing weapons early. I really only think they kick in once you've got your duelist perk procced, once you've got the throwing weapons mastery, and once you've got bags and belts and quick hands, that's when they start to shine. Early game, yes, you get the bonus to hit, but at that point I'd rather be using a crossbow to level people up personally.
Yeah, I guess for for my side of it, whether or not it's the best weapon, the handguns are my favorite personally. And the simple fact of it is, for me, I see throwing weapons as the strongest because there's not an enemy, at least to throwing axes, that it doesn't become effective against. If you're taking out armor, you're doing a good job. The damage with it, especially with the barbarian throwing axes, is very nice. I do like that. But in terms of the handguns, I I just love the versatility of it. You have, you do something like Fearsome, or you add the Headhunter perk, or you add, let's see, you have like Overwhelm. That's obviously the big thing. There's a lot of good that comes from taking out a bunch of armor at once when you do take out, or even just like hitting somebody who's has exposed hit points and stuff, and being able to spread that across. I just find it to be not only fun, but really just overall effective. I mean, just imagine if you can overwhelm a negative 10% on everybody in front of you. And if you do get that kill, you have Berserk, you have that opportunity to pump another 10%, as well as just eating away at the enemies. I just like that. Granted, you'd have to be close, but yeah, it's kind of a hard one not to really just enjoy when you're out on the field. And also, on top of that, having like 3 of them, for instance, or 2, and even using it as a hybrid, you can do that. So it's just my favorite.
Agree.
I don't know. It's just it's really a fun. It's a lot of fun, and it does, with 2 of them together, causing that havoc, you can do a lot of damage, or at least a fair amount of damage, compared to like singly targeting things with like a crossbow, or like, I understand like the archers, you're gonna have the range, you're gonna have the versatility of taking out things that are farther away, and absolutely no hate to that. Obviously, it's just, yeah, I just find so much use with the handguns. So
I think you're spot on about the number of handguns, Buggo. Like, 1 handgun is fine, but I think other range weapons probably outdo it in terms of versatility and pure damage. Obviously, it's got the benefit of the debuff, but once you start talking about 2 or 3 handguns in a back line,
it's devastating.
then you start seeing absolutely ridiculous outcomes. And I know what you mean about the Berserk, but you don't even need to prop Berserk, because you don't always, right? Because the damage isn't necessarily crazy. But you can just have 2. Have 1 in the pocket. And on the first turn, while the enemy's advancing, pull the pocket handgun out, reload it. Once they get in range, bang, quick hands, bang. You don't even need Berserk to get both of yours off. So that's 6 handguns firing as the line to me. Everything's dead. It's fine. As long as they've got morale.
Yeah, it would be so much fun to do. And I've yet to do it. I've had, the most I ever had was 4 handguns. But I always thought if you did a Peasant Militia run, and you could get 6 on the back line and just literally use shield walls or whatever it is, or however you're building your company out, but just being able to do that mass splash of damage and really focus in on the enemy is just seems like a blast. That'd be so
Can we
much
talk
fun,
about
so.
like enemy specific stuff in relation to this question? Because it's all well and good talking about it in general, and that's fun.
Yeah.
But I feel like if you find hexes, it's got to be crossbows, because you've got the flexibility of movement. You can get the angle, you can fire the shot early, you can cut down their number. If you're fighting necromancers, it's got to be bows, just because you can get the volume of target to try and take them out. Definitely my favourite.
Hexes, I would go with bows as well.
Oh, really? You'd go bows? Okay, I can see it.
Hexes would be bows for
I
me as
prefer
well.
goblin bows.
But I want to get the range. I want to get able to move in close and take that crossbow bolt to the face. I feel like that's more reliable than sitting back, ding,
a
ding, ding.
crossbow headshot will kill him, but you have to get the headshot.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
for
that's
sure.
true. That's
For sure.
true.
Like, just straight up, it'll just one-shot him. The bow won't do that.
See,
I mean, it may, I guess. I don't know. I think for necromancers, I think the crossbow is better, actually. Because
Yeah.
no. I'll tell you what.
Behind something though, right?
Yeah, exactly. So what do you do with the bow? You stand there and you just shoot over the zombie, and you don't hit him.
Oh
Like,
man,
you
as if
will
you're gonna
spend,
run
like,
a
10
crossbowman
turns.
around, as if.
You'll spend like, but no, like, okay, maybe you don't, but like, what 80% of players, 90% of players, even myself, I'll do that. Like, I'll just take a bow and just stand there and shoot over the fallen hero, and I'll take what took me like 18 arrows to kill a necromancer. Like, that's horrible. You like what I do. I don't know if I'm like famous for this or not, but you take a guy, you go around, and you go to the side, and the fallen heroes only protect the front. So you take a guy with a crossbow, go around the side, and then you just one-shot the necromancer. And the crossbow is better for that, because it can just kill the necromancer just quicker once you actually start hitting them.
That's cool.
I mean,
I'm on board with that strat, but you're not telling me you can do that when you're up against really mass numbers.
Yeah, you can. No, you can.
No
You can do-
way.
Yeah, I've done it with
30
dude.
30 undead? Come on.
Yeah, easy claps, dude.
Oh man, I'm
Yeah,
excited.
you can watch it. I can get links for you.
Crossbowing around north.
Yeah. Yeah, this is real, man.
If you can get round the sides of 30, then surely you don't even need a crossbow at that point. You can just walk to the.
Well, no, you don't
necromancer,
walk
right?
to the neck. No, you get 6 tiles away and then shoot them. You don't have to walk to them, but you can just get around and then use the ranged.
I'm saying once you're around all of the undead, you could just walk to him, right?
No,
don't
because the
even need
fallen
to cross
heroes
that.
will then once you get close, they'll start like moving around with you.
So
Their AI is like slightly smart.
I kind of want to throw my head on the ring on this one, because in terms of like crossbows and stuff, being able to use obviously bullseye, but if I'm using not bullseye for crossbows, but more, obviously that'd be helpful. But in terms of a bow, you know, using a war bow, for instance, I always use fast adaptation with my war bows if I'm going to go that route. And with bullseye, obviously it's giving me a better opportunity. But the reason why when it comes to necromancers, I'd still say a handgun, because I don't have to get within range. I can literally stand and just pelt him. The armor itself is trivial in terms of what a handgun can do. So as long as I have a guy following, one guy who can hold the 2 fallen heroes, I can just fire. The first shot's gonna jack him up, and if I get another shot, you know, it's gonna absolutely just it's almost an insta kill.
So do you step forward 4 on your necro fights in the first round? Is that your first action? Step forward 4, so then your handguns or whatever are in range.
Yeah, I try to get, honestly, if I'm using handguns, I like to advance towards the zombies. I know a lot of people will wait for them to crash into line and take their shots, but with handguns, it's easier to be more aggressive and push the advance and actually hold choke. I mean, if you have any kind of choke points, whether it is a grave or whatever, gravestone or whatever it is, you can get in better position, and you're right there. You're right there at the necromancer, because generally you'll get the first chance to run out, and then you just pelt right through the guys. And if there's a mass amount, you only really need here's the thing, handguns are so effective against anything that's exposed. You got zombies, really good against that. My favorite target with handguns, not to throw this conversation a different way too hard, but I love them against orcs. I love them against goblins especially. I think the best weapon against goblins is a handgun. They absolutely shred goblins, and the morale checks that you get. I've defeated the legendary location or whatever, Goblin City, several times because of that. The handguns, three handguns I walked in with, and just shredded them. It's insane how much damage and how because their health is so low, of course, and their armor isn't that high. They're dodgy, but with really high range skill, you can just absolutely wreck face. And the other thing too, guys, if you didn't know this, I found this out through the modding community that bullseye does not work with handguns. Apparently, it's literally just like an AoE. You have a percentage target. You have a percentage chance on each one of the enemies, so that's not like a hiding enemy when you fire it.
That's good.
So, yeah, yep. So that's how I would handle it. But yeah, that's interesting, Carve. I'd like to see that too. That's pretty sweet. If that's how,
Okay, yeah, I
that's
can.
that easy for sure.
I'll link it after this.
Sweet.
Right on.
I would like to ask. Wait,
Yeah,
I have
go for
a
it.
question.
Yep.
Gordon, you said that throwing weapons make the best hybrids, and then you said the best DPS is a pure thrower. So where's the hybrid part come in?
So for me, because my thrower builds have got quick hands anyway, it's natural that they lean therefore into a hybrid build. And so depending on the brother, and obviously all of this is brother dependent, right? If you've got a brother, I'll quite happily have my throwing brothers in the front line, starting with a shield, ready to flip out into a weapon, or have them standing back. And then if I'm wanting single target damage, or whatever, you could maybe pick your poison. Maybe it's an axe or whatever. So I might take out the shield, just something like that to give me a bit more flexibility. But in my hybrids, whereas I see a lot of other hybrid builds where it's the melee attack is the primary and the ranged is the secondary. For me, it's the other way around. The melee attack is the secondary that they'll use situationally, but they're primarily using the ranged attack from the throwing weapons. So that's how I like my hybrids.
Okay.
Right on. All right, guys. Well, let's jump into the next one here. Is everybody good? Anybody want to add anything else? Shinobi, anything you want to add, or you guys
No,
comfortable
no,
now?
I'm good.
Right on. Okay. All right, so this one's going to be kind of interesting here, and it did get a little bit of question, but you're going to find for obvious reasons and stuff, and one came out on top, and the question is, which of these 5 recruitable brothers is your favorite / best? And so we have Raider, Nomad, Bastard, Militia, and finally Beast Slayer. As you guys can see on the screen there, Raiders came out with 13%, Nomads 15%, Bastards 15%, Militia 37%, and Beast Slayer 20%. So I'm gonna throw it out to you guys. Which of these do you feel is your either favorite, or would you say is, in terms of your roles of actually getting the brother you want, the best?
I walked the gilded path on this one. I have found a lot of really solid nomads. They have solid melee and range stats. You've got a lot of versatility with a nomad. They're generally fairly cheap compared to a beast slayer or a good solid militia. Even bastards. Very, very solid early game brother. Second on my list would have to go with Raider. Just love barbarians. What do you do?
Right on. Carve, how do you feel about that, man? Or how do you feel about
All right.
these?
Bastard is an easy last place. They just don't. They don't have many events. Some of them are bad. Like one of them is a guy will try and kill him. They don't really have many great traits. They can get -5 melee defense, which is just bad. Their big draw is they have a max of 67 melee attack, but a lot of these backgrounds, in fact, all the ones here except for Militia, oh, I guess Beast Slayer too, but they can get like up to 62, so 67 isn't even that special. Militia is really good for cheap, and it's good for peasant militia. But I think it's not the best at any of them. It can only get 62 melee. It can only get 47 range. It can get 7 max melee defense. I don't care about range defense. 105 stam is admittedly good, but 93 is a not a great minimum. Plus to resolve, like it's fine. There's nothing like fantastic about a militiaman. It's a kind of a above average all rounder. The Beast Slayer I think is slightly better in terms of a hybrid. It loses out on a little bit of defense, but it wins in everything else. So the Beast Slayer is just better than the Militia and also has better events. The Raider, I actually don't use Raider. I don't really know why I don't use Raiders. Probably because they're really expensive. They're good. I have nothing against them. The only issue they have is they have slightly below average, or I guess they have like not good stam. It's not like bad. It's just average stam. They can't make hybrids, but oftentimes you just want a frontliner, so that's fine. And nomads, there's 2 nomads. So there's the melee nomad, which is really, really good. Then there's the range nomad, which is arguably the best hybrid if you get a really good ranged attack roll. And they just have more pluses, and they also have no bad events. I don't think the militia has a bad event either, but these backgrounds I think are just better overall.
Now, see, I would like to counter with the Bastards event being good, because you just find a cheap bastard that sucks, and then you get yourself hopefully a decent assassin out of the deal.
Okay, so you're saying the bastard is good because it can die.
The Bastard's
an
great
event.
for dying.
All right, I'll accept that.
not that the Bastard's good, but that event is good.
If you like your bastard, it's a bad event. If you don't like your bastard, it's a good event.
You can still end up getting both of them. You just have to pay a price.
Yeah.
A
No, I'm
higher
not
price,
saying-
Which, yeah, no, I think both sides are fair to it. I mean, but yeah, yeah.
Overall, I think but like I wouldn't get a bastard necessarily and be like, yeah, I hope he gets assassinated, or like, I hope I get an assassin out of that. Maybe maybe you do. I don't think that's like, it's not on my mind.
Heck, is it only me?
Yeah. Well, Gordon, how do you feel? How do you feel about this this whole thing?
I agree that nomads come out on top. You pay a premium for them, but I mean they're clearly best. But both the melee and the range brothers are solid. The only issue potentially around them is their morale, and that's super easily patched in, since we've now got the arena and things like that. It's not a problem, and it's not terrible anyway. Raiders, by contrast, I've got no time for them. They've got good stat ranges, but their morale is properly gimped. So 30 through 37, I think. So 37 max, 30.
That's what the Nomad is, bro.
Sure, but
same.
the Nomad's about half the price. That's what I'm talking about. Do you know what I mean? Like if I've got to choose, and also you're in the south ready to do the arena stuff, so you're paying twice the price. Raiders like 28 a day or whatever on level
Nomad's
one.
the same there too. According to the wiki, according to the wiki,
Really?
they're the same.
Okay.
They're literally the same. Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong on that. Then it always feels like when I'm buying Raiders, maybe it's because the gear they come with, right? So maybe I'm paying more through the nose for them off the top. They always feel too expensive for what you got because they come with the melee defense that they do. Like, what is it, like 6 bottom or whatever?
6 to
But
10.
you want them in the front line, and the fact that they're so low on morale makes it tough to do that. Certainly, you got to work at it. So you end up paying an awful lot of money for what often ends up being a glorified backliner, and you can get decent backliners for 10 a penny. Right, it's not difficult to make that build work. So I rarely find myself buying Raiders. Really like the ranged Nomads, but I think out of this group, the Militiamen come out top for me. They beat out the Beastmen. Beastmen don't have enough melee defense for my taste. I know we're only talking like 2 or 3 difference, but it's a big 2 or 3 difference. Whereas the 2 or 3 difference in melee attack, I don't feel halfway as much as I do with the melee defense difference between a Beast Slayer and a Militiaman. Plus, Militiamen are cheap, and they are solid, and they are all-rounders. So I feel like at any point in my company's run, up until we get to the late game, a Militiaman can do a job for me, and I don't have to take any risks financially to get there. So Militiaman for me.
Right on. Yeah, I sympathize with a lot of things that are being said here. So I look at it as Nomads for me are the best because there's literally 2 different types of Nomads. You have the melee and you have the range. If you see a Nomad with a the Southern Bow, whatever it's called, that would be considered a range unit. And I personally, this will be a discussion at a later time, but I do feel like my favorite range unit in the game is the Nomad, even over a Hunter, which I know is going to be very controversial, but we'll go over that another time, like I said. But in terms of the actual unit itself, I love the Nomads. They come with amazing stats. The only thing that really kind of stinks would be that resolve. And in the same fashion, you look at Raiders. Now, for me, Raiders fall in this odd category because while they're pretty much identical from what I'm seeing here. Yeah, I think they're identical. They cost more, and I always find that for some reason when I get these guys, they have low resolve. They always seem to hit the low resolve. This is just personal, for me. But they low resolve, low health. But I do like that defense. I do love that they can get that top end, melee skill. You gotta love those type of things. But they just seem to fall out for me. Now I know the big question was, what did they call it? The bastards, right? So bastards for me, I've heard so many people that love bastards because yeah, it's risk reward. There's a lot of people that have pulled amazing bastards where yeah, their resolve was not good, but they had good fatigue. They had really good. I mean, their defense. They ended up hitting on the high end. You can have that 67 melee skill, which is pretty phenomenal. And if you do get lucky with that event, you can get an assassin or get a trade out with a brother. I've seen cheap brothers that were bastards as well. Now, the militia in my top 10 favorite, favorite recruits, militia did end up coming up on top. Militia are abundant. You can find them everywhere, and you can find them at all types of different ranges. You can find them really cheap. So yeah, they probably come in. Maybe they come in second place for me, but yeah, I don't know. I just have this. I have this affinity for the Nomads. I think that they are. I found them cheap too. I mean, cheap as in like 1,200 crowns, I'll take that. I'll take it because their stats overall are going to be right in line with what I'm looking for, especially with defense. Defense is so freaking important. And then the final thing, Beast Slayers. I absolutely love Beast Slayers. I think they are incredible. They have such high stats across all categories. So if you do find one with 2 stars in melee, or you find them 2 stars in melee defense, even if it's only 30 melee defense, which for some people is like, that's a lot. I just like that. I like that they're a well-rounded brother, because I know I utilize perks to mask a lot of the flaws, and Beast Slayers just don't have a lot of flaws. And so for that reason, I really do enjoy buying Beast Slayers where I can find them. So that's where I stand. Any other thoughts, guys, on this? Or
No, it's super interesting, like how different my impression in playing the game is versus the stats. I've just pulled up the stats after what Carl said, and he's absolutely right. They're basically the same brother, Nomads and Raiders. The only difference is maybe the loadout they'll come with and the cost up front. But apart from that, they're the same. And yet, if you'd asked me beforehand, my impression was that there were significant differences, and that was reflected in my hiring practices. It was just a figment of of the brothers I happen to have hired, rather than any reflection of the actual stat attribute ranges, because they're even down to the excluded traits. They're basically identical. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So thank you, Carl. I appreciate the education on that. That's good.
Yeah, I think a lot of what I don't like about is people talk backgrounds. A lot of it I think is selective memory. I'm not a psych major, so I don't know what the term is, but so bastards, I think are not a good background. Yes, you can get a good bastard, and you're gonna remember the really good bastard. That doesn't make the bastard a good background, though. Same with Militia and Beast Slayers. Like, Beast Slayers have an average of 2 less melee defense than Militia, and I'm just gonna not talk about range defense because I don't think anyone cares. But they're just objectively better in terms of stats in literally everything, or they're the same. But Militia are cheaper and more common. So if 50% of the Militia you find are good, that's maybe 50 Militiamen. If 50% of the Beast Slayers you find are good, that's maybe like 6 Beast Slayers. So you're going to remember all the really good Militiamen you get, because there's just more of them and they're cheaper. So the cost is an actual factor, but you just think there's like, oh, you have more options to get good Militiamen, or good this background, or whatever it is, like farmhands, other than Beast Slayers or Sellswords, just because you would buy more of them. It doesn't make the background actually better, though. Like, when I think to look at this, you have to look at hard stats and then the cost. The cost is the only thing that can't really, I guess, events, but I think stats are more important than events in the long run.
Yeah, I don't think events hold as much water as it used to. I mean, when you're newer to the game, I feel like it has a lot. It takes a bigger toll because you notice a lot of those things. Now that like for me, I played the game so much that when an event comes up, I just know what's happening and stuff, and I know that hey, it's either gonna go this way or this way. I'll take the gamble on this, right? And so it doesn't hold as much. But I do say that I think one of the loves of this game does come from people having those good experiences with certain brothers. For instance, one of the guys that ended up messaging, he ended up saying it was Wilson Knock. He said, I prefer Bastards, actually. They have some great extra events compared to Militia, and they're generally cheaper compared to others. And I really don't want to bring in Raiders and then end up getting attacked by a hunting party. So, like, for that instance, there are still people that hold on to those, pretty much the values of what they what they look for in a brother and stuff. So I guess at the end of it all, while the stats, you can look at the hard stats and say, well, I have a better chance with this brother, but for some reason I get lucky in this. Welcome to the RNG of Battle Brothers. You just never know. You just simply don't know what you're gonna get, but it's really cool to see like how people will defend. Some people will really defend. Who is it that Rock Prime? I know he ends up. There's a certain class that Daytailers, I think is what it is, and he swears by them. Like, that's his favorite thing. And so, hey, if you pull good brothers there, by all means, more power to you, right? So
that's a really good point, because if you've got favored classes, however irrational the favoring of that background is, If it makes you more affectionate to them and enjoy playing the game more and more engaged, then that's great. But if the Beast Slayer aesthetic does it for you, then more power to you. I just won't be joining you on that.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right, well, let's go on to another one here, guys. This one it's pretty simple here. Favorite / best one-handed sword: noble sword, shamshir, or fencing sword? Shinobi, I'll let you start with that.
So lately, I've been watching my friend Gordon play, and I have come around to the fencing sword based on watching 8 or 9 of his guys just dance around the map, pin cushioning things. I haven't used it much myself because I prefer a more blunt object approach to things rather than finesse, but I respect the hell out of it.
Any thoughts on some of the other swords here, like or noble or shamshir?
Shamshir is really fun to say. Gat, all right, you know.
Yeah.
Who doesn't like causing wounds? Everybody knows I love crippling strikes and wounding. It's glorious. But the damage, durability, and versatility you get with a noble sword in late game fights, such as Necrosavants, things, a lot of times where you're going to use your riposte against overwhelming numbers, that noble sword is something that you should have in your back pocket. If you've got a brother that's just primo built for that, it's not going to fail you.
Mm-hmm. Carve?
I'm gonna follow. Yeah, I'm gonna follow Shinobi. I think I like fencing swords the most. But the key word there is I like fencing swords the most. I think riposte is just a bad ability. I think that can be I kind of hesitate to say proven, but it's pretty bad in most scenarios. So the noble sword doesn't do much. Like the regular attack is okay, but it's probably worse than most other weapons for duelists. And then if you're doing it for the plus chance to hit in the early game, I guess that's fine. But by late game, you'd probably you'd have brothers that can hit things, so you wouldn't use a sword there. I honestly haven't used Shamshirs much. I think if you min-max the cut wound ability, that could be pretty cool. I'm interested in seeing somebody do that, but I haven't done it myself. So I don't want to call them bad, but I don't think the regular attack would do that much. I've used the regular attack sometimes. So then it defaults onto the fencing sword. And like Shinobi said, I don't use the fencing sword too much. But I respect it. I think fencers are better than I gave them credit for in the fall. But I would not. They don't really fit in my company too well. So they kind of just end up being the best because I think noble swords aren't good and Shamshirs are so specialized and niche.
Mm-hmm.
Now, riposte.
It's bad, yeah.
See why it's a bad ability, but I have seen things that would make me say otherwise, such as one brother killing 8 Necrosavants with riposte.
Well, that's the only moment riposte makes sense, is Lone Wolf, genuine Lone Wolf. Then riposte is great because the AI can't screw you. It's got to attack you, and so riposte then can work if you can make the build work and all the rest. But any other situation, they'll just attack someone else, and your great brother who you'd set up beautifully with the Wrath of God one you got from the Kraken or whatever isn't going to get hit. You're going to cry into your cups. Yeah, I totally agree with Carl.
I will counter
it should
you.
Be amazing, and it's not.
I'll counter you there. I have a second ability. I've used fearsome riposte versus barbarians specifically works out. Because barbarians are just like they're big and dumb. They'll just hit you, rotate their friend in, hit you again, and then they all start breaking. But only against barbarians, because barbarians they don't have like their AI will hit you, and if you kind of get yourself surrounded, they won't run away and hit other things. Like, and other humans won't attack into riposte, but barbarians will. Orcs will just break you. Orcs don't care. Other things don't even have morale. So barbarians only.
Okay, that's interesting. I have to see it on that edge case. That's a good shout.
I'll link you that as well.
Yeah, excited, mate. So for me, this conversation is an easy one. I think Carv and Shinobi are absolutely right. Fencing sword is a clear winner here, with Shamshir being a very able deputy, potentially on a duelist. But really, this comes down to what brother you're giving it to, right? Like, you can almost do this as a level of brother. Bad brother is getting the noble sword. Mid-tier brother is getting the Shamshir. And if you get the right recruit, then you can give them fencing sword. Because a bad bro with a fencing sword is terrible. Like, it's just not going to work. Like, it's actually worse than anything else you could give them, because all they're going to do is get themselves into trouble, get fatted out, get killed, do no damage while they're up to it. But if you get an amazing brother with the right initiative, with the right HP, with the right fat, with the right melee attack, and with the melee defense, then you can do incredible things with the fencing sword. The damage can be insane, and of course, the real bit where it edges out everything is the flexibility in movement. If you're willing to have a party that's more fluid than the traditional lines, then suddenly fencing swords can come into their own. But if you're not, so if your tactics aren't going to reflect the fencing swords, and your brothers aren't ready for the fencing swords, then fencing swords come dead last, way lower than your militia spear. Do you know what I mean? Fencing swords have actively made your company worse. But if all of those things are in line, then they can excel to a degree that's really exciting, really fun, and makes battles half the speed, half the time to get done, which for me is a big bonus. Shamshir duelists, though, do need a shout out in this chat. We're going to talk about these three swords. We have to talk about Shamshir duelists. There's very few enemies scarier than a Shamshir duelist swordmaster champion who's got his famed Shamshir, because they will injure you every single time, because they will gash every time. And you can have a bit of that yourself if you want. You can go down the duelist route, a nice famed Shamshir, and you suddenly put in injuries on everything. Oh no, there's an unhold, injured. Don't worry about it, because you've got your Shamshir duelist. So they are a fun build, fun weapon, well worth playing with. But they're no fencing swords.
Don't forget to bring your crippling strikes.
You don't even need it. You don't even need it with a Shamshir.
But you should have it though.
No. Well,
It's all about wand.
yeah.
It's all about wand.
Well, let me kind of okay. So here's where I'm gonna jump in, and I'm gonna totally rip the grain right off that. So I believe that noble swords are easily number one. I think that if we use a noble sword and you're gonna use riposte, you have to have a swordmaster mindset, bar none. If you look at a swordmaster, they have really high defense, they have really good melee, and from there it'd be probably like fatigue, for instance. And so if you are building out with if you're really high in defense and you're using more of a sentry type of build, it's very, very effective. And I found that it's effective against a lot of things in the game, even if it's like really heavy armor. I know it's not the perfect setup. I can't say it. Setup. But the way that I use these noble swords is keeping them to the outsides. They are brothers that generally are paired up with one other person on the outside. So my far outside brother usually is an AoE character. The guy right next to him is usually going to, if I'm going to have a sword master, they usually will be in that spot next to them to be able to jump into the thick, because I know the defense is going to hold up in a more hairy situation, and I know that if they do get surrounded, I'm going to have a better chance. Now, it is true, if you're stuck in the thick, it is, enemies will try to avoid that. The AI is set up that way. But I've done a lot of things with noble swords where I feel it is the best. Because fencing swords have they're either boom or they're bust, like you guys were just talking about. If you don't build a brother out to be perfectly fit for a fencing sword, it's just not going to work. It's very specific, and you have to, when you find the right brother, then you can really, the sky is the limit type of thing. But in terms of a duelist and what can be done, I think noble sword hits I think it's one of the stronger builds in the game. And I've had it so many times, I've used it so many times, I've used it against most enemies in the game. I was the guy who ended up doing the 8 Necker Savants with a noble sword and just absolutely wreck them. So from that perspective, I also have to look at the Shamshir. Now the Shamshir is the absolute middle for me. And the reason why the Shamshir is in the middle is because, again, if you have a duelist and he's got double grip going on for him, well, obviously double grip, but he also has the duelist perk, and he is using crippling strikes. I did a video obviously with crippling strikes showing the thresholds and whatnot, and technically a Shamshir can cause an injury on an unhold with the damage output that you're able to cast. So if that's the case, hitting somebody through their armor is going to be incredibly easy, especially when you're facing really dangerous opponents like the I gotta think of the name of it. We were just talking about Chosen, for instance. So it's incredibly great. The only thing that kind of stinks is what type of injury are you putting on the enemy? If you're getting a cut leg, obviously that is just devastating for anything to go against. And I still am under the impression that crippling strikes isn't terrible, let alone being able to use the Shamshir ability. What is it called again? Gash.
Yeah.
So Gash is incredible because most things that you face in the game are going to cause an injury. When we cause injuries and we're doing a lot of hit points, any type of hit point damage, you're going to cause morale checks. This can also be continuously put forth if you do use a fearsome type of build, because this weapon is based around causing injuries. It's based around those morale checks. It's incredibly dangerous. So a while ago I ended up doing my the fencing build guide, and I used quick hands. And the thing is with quick hands and you can use all three of these weapons at will. In that same phase, if you have really high defense with like dodge and stuff, you can switch to Noble Sword, use riposte in a bad situation. If you have a Shamshir, you're automatically duelisting. You're turning into a duelist with a Shamshir, causing more injuries. These weapons are all interchangeable. They all have served their own little purpose and stuff. But if I had to say which one comes out on top for me and how it's able to handle a crowd of people, definitely goes to the Noble Sword. So
how cool is that? We've got such different opinions on it all.
I don't know. You guys have the same opinion. I think, listen, hey, if it's coming down to which one is the best at its absolute peak, then I would say the fencing sword. But if you're talking about a weapon that can even be effective with a shield, I would definitely give it to the Noble Sword. The Shamshir with a shield.
Imagine a fencer with a shield.
Well, see, that's the... Oh my God, can you imagine? Yeah. But that's the whole thing. Ugly. That's very ugly. Because when it comes down to it, it's like a Shamshir. Shamshir with a shield makes absolutely no sense to me. It's...
Same.
You need that damage. Yeah, exactly. You need the penetration. So again, the only weapon with a shield that can make sense would be a Noble Sword. Noble Sword has so many different looks to it. You can go a nimble route. You can go the same exact like with a fencing sword, having all the defense, having all the opportunities to, lunging at people, whatever the case is. With a Noble Sword being able to switch out, you have really high defense, and you're able to wait the round well if you're in a bad position to be able to protect yourself. And that's the whole thing. The idea is Noble Swords are meant to be in the thick. And so that's why I give it the edge.
It seems like everything in this game has its place.
Right.
And each one of these weapons fits such a different brother, different build, different, class of scenario that you're going up against. It's a really good question. But I think a lot of it does have to do with situation and preference.
Yeah, context is key here, right?
For sure.
Yeah. I like to say about the Shamshir is my age-old question about injuries is how much do the injuries actually get you? Because you're going to kill the enemy anyway.
True.
And I think the Shamshir is way scarier on an enemy because you don't want your brothers to die. If let's be real, the Raiders aren't going to win. The Raiders are going to die. So the fact that you cause cut leg to the Raider, if he dies in the same turn before he gets an action off, the injury actually did 0.
True.
So it really depends on on an on-hold, it's probably really good because the on-hold will live for 4 more turns after you start hitting them. So that injury might do something. But if it's on a Raider or a Footman or whatever, they're just going to die anyway. So the fact that you did the injury doesn't do much. Granted, if you're going to do a Shamshir, I would still do crippling strikes because you have to get the injury. If you're not getting injuries with the Shamshir, you're failing. So you have to just min-max that, and hopefully that you'll get good injuries, and then I don't know. It just seems kind of counterintuitive to me.
See, the only
It's got a small pool of enemies, right, that you really want to use it on. It's basically unholds, maybe
Lindworms.
some of the orcs, lindworms, and
I-
sergeants, maybe.
I still
And
look.
what's the last one?
I was going to say sergeants.
Maybe the Idrock.
Yeah, check.
I'm gonna go cut the leg of the
Sure,
Idrock. I have no idea.
Go home, Carve. Heck yeah.
Well, okay, so here's my counter to that. You have champions in the game, you have chosen in the game, you have really high end hit point characters in the game. If you're able to go toe to toe with them, causing them an injury, you think of going against a. This is more for the I'm talking like obviously as we get into the late game, blade dancers and so on. Being able to cause an injury on them could change the tide of battle. Doing it to an assassin, for instance, can change the tide of battle. You may miss, but if that shot hits and lands and gives all your other brothers a better chance to strike through them, I still look at it as I would rather take the Shamshir to cause something that's going to change the tide of battle, even if it is just a raider. If a raider ended up taking out, or let's say we're facing the noble house and they're using heater shields and they're just shield walling every single time, cutting a gap in the line is incredibly important. Yes, you may get the kill the very next strike, but that very next strike made it tenfolds easier for the rest of your company to be more effective. And so injuries to me are just it's like height advantage for me, in my opinion, because if you're getting a better chance to cause a rift in the battle to give you the edge, and that's how I look at injuries and stuff. I do understand the other side of it, like, well, you're gonna kill them anyways, like it's just the inevitable type of thing. I get that, but it's not just how many times are you focusing simply on injuring an unhold. It's
like never.
Exactly, like never. So then you can either take that one of two ways. You can either take that as, that just fortifies why crippling strikes is completely useless, or that can fortify the idea that if you do cause it, you make it easier for you to focus on other units, or like I use Overwhelm, for instance, to make it easier for other brothers to do their work. I debuff an enemy that's in a better position to hurt other brothers. I use that as a defensive mechanism instead of it just being a one-on-one mechanism. So for yourself, does that make sense? So that's it's just the shift of thinking of how you're using that weapon and what you're trying to accomplish on the battlefield.
Yeah, I would just say if you want to cause an injury to like let's say a champion chosen, really, really scary enemy, you can do that with the Shamshir Duelist. But why would I would personally never place that brother, anyone who's not a tank, in front of a champion chosen, unless there's a tank next that can taunt the chosen. So if the tank can taunt the chosen, it actually doesn't matter what you're doing if you're injuring the guy or not, because he's not hitting you. Like, he's not gonna. If they cut leg muscles is like the only thing I can actually think that would be like helpful for the plus melee on other people. But like cut hand or cut face or whatever, like those don't help your other brothers do anything. So you have a chance of making your other brothers help you, but you're basically getting your guy almost ready to be killed because he's gonna have a champion chosen hitting him with an axe or a hammer or whatever. So but if the tank is there, it doesn't matter. So the injury therefore doesn't matter because he's not gonna hit you, or he's not gonna be like weaker against you. You know what I mean?
That's a hard disagree from me, Carl.
Yeah,
I obviously heard the chat from you before about needing tanks. I mean, firstly, I don't think you need tanks late game when you're going to be facing these chosen champions. Your brothers are all going to be tanks because they're all going to have incredible MDef anyway by that stage. And having a bro who can just stand in front of them versus having a bro who's got good MDef and can do amazing DPS like our Shamshir Duelist, who rather than standing there and taunting is going to put some injuries on him or he's going to break his morale. It's just no contest to me. Like, why would I waste a spot in my company for a guy whose job it is to stand around and wait for someone else to come and hit something?
That is a radical idea of hating tanks. I think that is.
I don't hate tanks. I love tanks. Early
tanks
game,
have...
and I need someone to get me through.
They're
Once I've got to the late game and my brothers are all gods, I've got no room for any of them. They're just chaff.
Yeah, I agree with it. I will say that I don't think, like, I like to move on from tanks as I get into the later game. I like to have all, like I've stated it before. I seek out higher defensive brothers, and I don't need the absolute high end melee, because I know through leveling, if I end my number one goal is to get over 87 as my melee, because I know in the next 3 levels I'll be at 90. And so if the defense is there, then I can be more effective on the battlefield, killing the things and also avoiding those crazy shots. But I do understand exactly where you're coming. It's just it's the basis of just simple tactics. If you like doing that, by all means, more power to you.
Oh, for sure. And I think again it comes back to what sort of brother we're talking about. Like, we can talk about these weapons in isolation and sort of their upsides and downsides, but which one you're going to put on them and where you're going to put them in the battlefield all depends on the brother, right? If we're talking about a not very good Shamshir duelist, then I'm totally with Carl. What you're doing, you're putting near anyone scary, because he's just going to die, right? If his MDef's 10 or whatever, it's a waste of everyone's time. But if he's, MDF 35 and he's spec'd and he's ready to go and he's got high initiative and he's going to stack overwhelm and he's going to be great, then for sure, send him wherever, because he's going to look after himself. And I think a lot of these weapons, so you were talking about the benefits of noble swords, and I totally get that in certain situations and with certain brothers at certain times during the evolution and the development of your company. And that's what's so great about Battle Brothers, because all of these weapons, like Shinobi said, have their place depending on which brothers end up in your company and what you're going to be taking on.
For sure. Definitely. Yeah, it's definitely an interesting thing. So again, the final tally ended up going. I don't know if did I tell you guys the tally? I don't even know if I said the tally.
No,
but
you didn't.
Noble Swords 61, Shamshir 12, and Fencing Sword 27. And I think that what was interesting after I made the fencing build guide, and even just looking at people, after Carve ended up making his afterwards, and I saw in Reddit a lot of people were kind of jumping on that wave of trying fencing swords, and I think fencing swords have been on the wayside for so long that the people who have been playing the game for a long time ventured into it. It's not something that you get into as a new Battle Brothers player. But when you understand the mechanics and you get into initiative and stuff, it is easily the most fun, I think, or one of the most fun weapons in the game.
Oh, it's so much fun. It's
100%. Yeah, so...
but it's also the easiest thing to get your company completely destroyed, because every single line is asking you a positional question, right? Whereas usually you've got your formation, your position, maybe you've got to do some rotation, maybe a little move to change a flank. But broadly speaking, you've got your position and you're doing stuff within that with the enemy. With Fencing Sword, every single lunge is a chance to completely destroy your positioning.
100%. Yeah,
your nimbly boy just goes flying across the field, pokes something, and now he's stranded.
It's beautiful. Yeah. So one of the comments here, so Salman Barbary ended up saying Fencing Sword is the most fun to use by far. For general purpose though, Noble Sword is the best. So it's there's a lot of it's swords are unique. These things are all in a class of their own, and definitely I encourage everybody who's watching this, if you haven't tried these out, give them a chance. Kind of read into the actual, or what they generally do, and try to find these builds as well, because they are insanely fun. With that, we're getting close to the hour mark, so I think what we're going to do is we're going to call it here today, guys. Anything you guys want to say before we get wrapping this thing up?
Excited to do more.
Yeah, same. And screw tank.
Screw tanks.
I don't know, when you have to fight 12 orc warriors and you put a guy with 45 melee defense in front of them, he's probably going to get his head kicked in a lot.
Well, with a two-handed hammer
and
40 defense,
I went off on an absolute tear.
It's not as safe as 75 for sure.
It's not safe. You haven't, for that turn when he's been sat in there with 75 MDev, you haven't killed anyone, so you've still got dangerous enemies knocking around.
And just
but he's not. But they don't do anything though.
Two shots
to him. Shots. What about the rest of your guys?
But there's less people on the rest of your guys because they're all on the tank.
At some point when RNG fails you, though, that's the only thing that's going to be the real killer. But at the same time, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, there are perks meant to keep tanks, at the front lines in the ultra late game, and there's perks for the absolute killers. So
and the key thing is, you can do all of the tough stuff in Battle Brothers with loads of different types of strategy. You don't need an optimal, if the reason is an optimal strategy, to do everything you want to do in Battle Brothers. You can do it any which way.
Right.
There's plenty of ways that will let you do it.
For sure.
Unpopular opinion, my tanks get berserk. They do. Not lying. My tanks still pack a punch every time. They'll taunt.
They stopped being a tank about 10 minutes ago then.
Yeah, right. That's the most non-tank perk that you could possibly pick. But
I love it.
that's all right. All right, guys. Well, with that, if you'd like to join the Discord, be a part of this, sit in on one of these Battle Brother podcasts, you can definitely do so. If you're a YouTuber, hey, in the description below, join that Discord, because I'd love to have you on here, talk with you at least, and we're going to be getting into all kinds of different areas in terms of this podcast. It's just for fun, obviously, and so hopefully you guys learned some things today. If not, sorry. Hit that like, subscribe, say something in the comments, let us know what you guys think, and we will talk to you in the next one. Bye!